What's going on, guys? Treasured up here in the Model X on the highway. Right now I'm actually on my way to Barrie, which is about an hour and 15 depending on traffic, away from Toronto. Gonna be taking autopilot the entire way. As I say that, let's go ahead and go into autopilot right now. And since I'm in autopilot, I'm also gonna go on navigate on autopilot. So I'm actually giving the car permission to make lane changes and the appropriate on and off ramp decisions on its own. As you can see right now, it's making a decision to change lanes here on its own, so it will continue to so. Notice that this car is going slower, so I decided to change into this lane, and we'll just let autopilot do its thing. Autopilot, once again, letting me know that there's a lane change coming up, and it's going to do it. As soon as I touch the steering wheel, it's going to actually make the lane change on its own here. Nicely done. And we'll continue on again. Going to try and maintain the 120 kilometers per hour on the highway the entire way. Hopefully we'll see how much traffic we run into or anything like that, but I'm going to let autopilot do its thing for the most part. Autopilot making a lane change here, noticing that the traffic ahead is slower. Again, we're in the far left lane, so I will bump it up to 125 just so we can get past all these trucks and cars. So once we pass this truck here, autopilot will probably get back into this lane. There it is, letting me know it's making the lane change. I actually have to touch the steering wheel before it does that, and there we go. And as we do that, I'm going to come back down to 120. You're going to see me periodically actually touch the steering wheel here and there, and that's because autopilot is trying to make sure that you're not falling asleep or you're not sleeping and you're paying attention to what's going on the road. They generally want you to have your arm or hands on the steering wheel, but for video purposes I'm just gonna be off the steering wheel here, just so you guys can see what the car is actually capable of doing. There we go. Once again, asking me to put pressure on the steering wheel to confirm the lane change. Autopilot doing this all on its own. Once again, slower traffic. We are in the far left lane, so I'm going to bump it up to 125. As of right now, I do have a destination set into the navigation, and currently we are an hour and 4 minutes away from our destination. Looks like we'll have 66% battery left once we do get to our final destination. Autopilot automatically recognizing that there's a slower lane here. That's pretty awesome that it did that. That's nice. Nicely done. There we go. Autopilot making a lane change once again. Nice. Still letting me know there's an upcoming lane change. I'm just curious to see when it's actually going to do it. There is space in the lane to do it now. I guess we'll see. Oh, here we go. And so here's autopilot making the lane change now. All right. All right, looks like it wants to make the lane change, but it doesn't have space to right now. No space. Still no space. What's it gonna do? What's it gonna do? Oh, it's gonna slow down. Oh, it's actually gonna pull in here. It will. Yep. Look at this. Look at that. There you go. Nicely done. Got in front of the truck and then slowed down a tiny bit to make the lane change behind this car over here. Now it's gonna make the lane change on its own once again. Nicely done. And we're 400 meters from our first turnoff to a different highway. Alright, and as you can see, autopilot knows that the ramp is coming, and so it's going to actually make the lane change. Nicely done. Now it's going to do it one more time, because obviously here comes the lane. Nicely done. Alright, nice and quick. Now it should make the lane change here. Oh, there we go. The slight right to stay on 400. Now it's gonna actually go into this lane now. Nicely done. Perfect. All right. So far, so good. It letting me know that it's making a lane change soon. Most likely because this lane will actually exit, and we don't want to exit. Our next turn off actually is not until another 89 kilometers, so we're actually pretty good. So here we go, Autopilot letting me know that it's going to make the lane change here. There we go, nicely done. As it does that, I'm going to actually intervene here because there's nobody on my left. I'm going to ask it to make the lane change to get away from these guys here. There we go. So now I can speed up and get a little quicker here. Okay, Autopilot letting me know it's making another lane change. As it does that now. There we go. Okay, Autopilot noticing that the lane ahead of me is actually slower. There's no one on my left, and it'll make the lane change and then speed up. Alright, looking like it's gonna make another lane change here. Nicely done. Okay, Autopilot wanting to get out of this lane back into the middle-ish lane, I guess. It is doing 120 now, so it is at speed, so now come into this lane and stay at 120. Alright, Autopilot once again noticing the slower traffic, so went all the way to the left lane and continuing on. Okay, so there's currently somebody coming up behind me here. I'm doing 120. I'm going to ask Autopilot to make the lane change just so these guys, or this guy and these guys, will actually go by, and we'll see what Autopilot does here. Okay, going to ask Autopilot to make the lane change here, just to get away from these guys and get back up to our requested speed of 120. Alright, making the lane change here to the far right lane for some reason. Alright, wants to be in this lane for some reason, but alright, we'll let it do its thing. Gonna ask Autopilot to make the change here to the middle, just because there's a car that's on the side over there. I'm actually just to get away from that car. This guy should have done that as well with the new laws here in Ontario, but he didn't. Now that that truck is out of the way, there comes Autopilot letting me know, you know what? I want you in this lane, so you're gonna go back into this lane. It's gonna go back into this lane on its own, and we'll continue on. Slow moving van ahead of us. Autopilot recognizes that. It's gonna make the lane change to the left here. Now we got some construction going on the left, so we'll see how well Autopilot does here when it comes to staying in its lane. So far, so good. Okay, Autopilot does not want to be in this lane, wants to go back into the middle lane, and it will do so. And once again, we'll just continue on and see what Autopilot does. Autopilot wanting to get out of this lane now and get into this lane here. As we do that, I'm going to actually bump it up to 125. Autopilot looking to get into the middle lane here. Nicely done. As it does that, I'm actually going to bring it down to 120. Okay, immediately Autopilot noticing that there's traffic much slower ahead of us, changes lanes. And then we'll go back up to 125. Once we get past this guy, we'll probably get back into that lane. There it is. Autopilot looking to make the lane change now. Gonna do so all on its own, and then I'm gonna bring it right back down to 125. Okay, Autopilot making a lane change here. There we go. Nicely done. We'll bump it up to 125 to get away from these two cars, and then probably get back into the middle lane. There we go. Autopilot once again asking for the approval by me touching the steering wheel back into this lane, and I'll bring it back down to 120. Autopilot making the lane change here, or wanting to make the lane change to the left lane. There we go. Done. And now Autopilot will change back into the middle lane. Nicely done. To be honest with you, most of the time when we go into the far left lane, I only bump it up to 125 if I see somebody a little further back that's obviously doing more than 120. So that's the only other reason. Otherwise, like I mentioned, I'm going to keep it at 120. Okay, Autopilot noticing the truck ahead, which is pretty far away. Nicely done here. Changing lanes to maintain the 120. I'm impressed about that. That was actually pretty far away that I made that decision. Alright, now that we passed that truck and trailer, Autopilot now wants to change back into the middle lane, and it will do so, and we'll continue on. There we go, on cue, Autopilot trying to get away from these guys that are slower, wants to maintain the 120, and I'll make the lane change. Nicely done. I won't bump it up to 125 because I do see a car in this lane coming up in the rear. And once again, now that we passed the car on the right lane, Autopilot will then slowly change over. Now, that was a little weird. It didn't mention or show that there was a car in this lane. I think it just picked up the truck a little late. It kind of picked up the truck coming back into this lane even though it wasn't. That's why that little noise came up, but I was paying attention, so it's all good. And I'm pretty sure if that truck did come back into the middle lane, that Autopilot would have just gone back into its lane that it was coming from. Okay, Autopilot once again noticing the traffic ahead, making the lane change to maintain the 120. And once again, nicely done here by Autopilot, noticing that there's space in this lane, going back into the middle lane. Once again, noticing the slower traffic ahead. Changing lanes here, and it's changing lanes on a turn too, so notice how nice and smooth that was, even though it was an actual turn that's coming up on the highway. Okay, Autopilot wanting to make the lane change here. Not sure why, because as soon as it does make the lane change, it's going to come up to slower traffic here, so I'm curious if it's going to go right back. Yep, there it is. Yep, Autopilot. Nope. Oh, no, it stayed. It stayed. Okay. All right. Let's see what happens here. So now navigating on Autopilot for some reason is over in this area. Not too sure why, but that is over now. So navigating on Autopilot is over. We're on Autopilot. So right at this point, because you see the two lines indicating the lane, it does know where to go, but it won't actually make lane changes or anything on its own. Interesting. I'm curious to see why that's like. Turn it off, and then we'll turn it back on. No, it doesn't want to. Interesting. All right. We are on Autopilot though. So we are currently still on Autopilot as we come up to some construction here. This guy literally just hit this cone. Oh boy. Okay. Interesting. I might have to look into that to see why navigating on Autopilot doesn't work. This is technically still a highway. Interesting. Regardless, at this point we are 11 kilometers away from our destination. Looks like 10 minutes away. Going along here, I think we're just we're just north of Barrie, and we're just going along here. So we are in Autopilot, which in this case, because it's on Autopilot, not on navigating Autopilot, it won't actually make the off ramp or lane change on it. So I'm actually going to make the lane change here because this guy's coming on. You got out of the way of this guy who's not even signaling. Does he know that there's a lane? Oh, there you go. Finally, there you go. Anyways, and now Autopilot right now is maintaining it's set to 110, so it's maintaining the 110 speed limit. Ask Autopilot to make the lane change here. Alright, and then as you can see on the screen now, in 1 kilometer we'll have to make a right-hand turn. At this point I have come off Autopilot because I do need to make a right-hand turn. That's it for today's video, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it, watching what Autopilot and navigating on Autopilot can do on the highway. Until the next one, guys.